ready, Sam? Okay. Good evening. Let's stand and sing our opening song. Blessed be your name. Okay, maybe seated. A couple quick announcements. Again, revival tomorrow night as well at 6:30. All are welcome. Again, a reminder, no Wednesday night Bible study this week. And we have Thursday, we have the food pantry here at the church, 6 to 7:30 p.m. Fall work day, November 1st, 8 a.m. And the following Saturday will be our fall festival. Bunch of free activities, and PJ's food truck will be here, available by purchase. And again, a reminder about the baby bottle boomerang. There's no bottles back there right now, but if you want one, see Tony. She'll get you one. Social media, again, continue to like, comment, and share our posts on Instagram and Facebook. And again, our prayer requests, get them on the cards and get them to us before services start, and we'll get them included. All right. Our next song is going to be for offering, our love offering for the Creation Foundation. And so if we have a couple of guys that could come up and get the plates here at the end or during the song, let's do it during the song. And that way we'll move it along there. So I have a couple of guys that can grab the plates for me, please. Don't make me call you out by name. Brad, Steve, during the song. Yes, we're going to start the song right now, forever. So, all right, I appreciate it. Good. Let's do it.
Good evening. A delight, as always, to be with you. Had a blessed day, and hope you did so as well. Last night, we discussed the issue of dinosaurs, beginning the biblical worldview of dinosaurs, as we started to explore that. Looked at their creation and the very powerful narrative that's out there regarding their evolution and how they turned into these birds eventually over time. And we saw how in academia, in case you weren't here last night, how birds are now being classified as reptiles. How many remember that from last night? Yes. And so, in fact, I had a friend send me a message this morning. Aaron Lawrence sent me a message from Oklahoma at our favorite ice cream store. He got a kids menu, and it had a dinosaur in there and had a chicken, a T-Rex and a chicken. It's always a chicken. Every time. It's never a dove. Like I said, it's never a dove or a crow or a cardinal or a blue jay, anything like that. It's never an emu. You know, you would think that one would be more like it, you know, or an ostrich. It's always a chicken every time. And it said in this little kids menu thing, you know, chicken is a dinosaur. It's closely related to a dinosaur. We saw how in little kids' books, okay, this was given to a friend of ours, feathers, 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 feathers. All covered in feathers to show this evolutionary process. And so, think about this. If we can get you to believe, so the world teaches, that at one point this cold-blooded, scaly-covered reptile, dinosaur, laid an egg that hatched out a warm-blooded, feathered-covered chicken in it, okay, not only can we get you to not believe the Bible, because which came first according to the Bible, birds or dinosaurs? Birds by a day. Okay, if we can get you to identify a bird is a reptile. Remember that little bitty book? Remember that little kid's book that showed, you know, what is a reptile? Remember the reptiles? Okay, they have backbones, they have noses, they have lungs, they're cold-blooded, and they're covered in scales. Remember that? Is a bird anything like that? No, not even close. But in academia today, if we can get you to identify the bird as a reptile, classify it as a reptile, what else can we get you to believe? What else can we get you to identify as? Hello? I mean, this is emperor has no clothes kind of stuff. This is incredible. If we can get you to believe that, the level of indoctrination we can do to a culture or civilization is unlimited. Hence why we make a big deal about this. So, as we said, because so many have bought into these ideas and have accepted the ideas of billions of years and that part of the evolutionary story, if they also try to hold on to the Bible, we talked about this Sunday morning, then there is one thing, there are a couple things they always have to compromise on, okay? They have to compromise in some way. Number one, the Bible's history. Can't be right in 6,000 years, okay? So we have to compromise those. Number two, we have to compromise on death before sin. So if we're going to accept the billions of years of history, then when Adam and Eve sinned, what changed? Nothing. There really was no consequence to the sin, I guess. That's how God made it. So those ideas teach. Which, isn't that what the devil said? You surely will not die. There's no consequence to this. Is that not the same teaching? And third, always, always, always have to concede, compromise. Could not be real. Did not really happen. The global flood. The global flood. Because if there was a global flood, it would have laid down these massive amounts of sedimentary layers all over the planet, filled with billions and trillions of dead things in it as a record of this global catastrophe. But if you're going to believe in millions of years, then your only evidence for that is there are all these layers of sedimentary rock that accumulated one after another, perfectly flat with no erosion in between them for millions and millions of years. That's your evidence. So if you accept a global flood, your evidence for millions of years is gone. If you accept the millions of years, you can't have a global flood. You can't have both. That's how that works, okay? So when you find somebody who says, well, I accept those ideas, but I also want to believe the Bible, you can automatically ask them, do you think there was a global flood? The answer will be no, there was not. So what does the Bible say? Should that not be the place where we start, right? Okay, well, let's see what the Bible says. In Genesis chapter 6, 7, and 8, and 9, as we have the flood narrative, we have several texts, several references that give the kind of tell us the extremity of this event, the nature of it. 6:13, God says the end of all flesh has come. How much of it? All. Not in just one location, but on the entire planet. Even I, am bringing the flood of water. Who brought this judgment? God did. Over and over again, he emphasized this was not a natural occurrence, what took place. What started this was supernatural, because it was a judgment brought by God. He brought upon the earth to destroy all flesh, in which is the breath of life from under heaven. The word there, shamayim, for heaven, can be used for the sky, outer space, or the throne room of God. So, everything under the sky. Does that narrow it down to just one location on planet Earth? No. What does that tell us as to the scope of this flood? Everywhere. Everything under the sky. Everything, it says again, that is on the earth shall perish. We go on to chapter 7. It says, the waters prevailed more and more upon the earth, so that all the high mountains, how many of them? All, everywhere under the sky were covered. The water prevailed 15 cubits higher, and the mountains were covered. All flesh that moved on the earth perished. Are you starting to get the idea? Is it detailing it enough for you? Giving enough descriptions as to the scope, the magnitude of this flood? Verse 23, thus he blotted out every living thing that was upon the face of the land, from man to animals to creeping things and to birds of the sky, and they were blotted out from the earth, and only Noah was left. If it was only a local flood, which is what is taught by those who accept the millions of years, would Noah be the only person who survived this flood on the planet? No. There would have been other people who survived as well. So then, when the Bible says only Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord, that's a lie. Apparently there were plenty of other people who did as well that survived this event, if it was just a local flood. There's nothing unique or special about Noah then, because there are plenty of other people who survived as well. 2 Peter. We're in the New Testament now. What does it say? Did not spare the ancient world, but preserved Noah, a preacher of righteousness, with 7 others, when he brought a flood upon the world of the ungodly. How many total were saved? 8. 8. So the New Testament says. And Luke chapter 17. They were eating, drinking, marrying, being given in marriage until the day that Noah entered the ark, and the flood came and destroyed them. How many on the earth? All. Who was the person who said that? Jesus. What did Jesus believe? And it's not a matter of believe. What did Jesus know for a fact? Because he witnessed it. It was a global flood. So, the Bible, there's no doubt. And if you read the scholars, even the secular ones, the guys who tried to say, oh, it was just local or whatever, you read, they will admit the intention of the text was to say it was global. It's just that we know today it wasn't, it was just local. Hence the local legends. The problem with those local legends, see, I had a professor in a secular university who I kind of pointed out, it's kind of interesting, all of these hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of civilizations around the world that have a flood in their records, in their traditions. The professor wasn't too pleased that I had noted that. I didn't say anything about the Bible. I just said, it's interesting, isn't it? And she said, well, that's just because all those civilizations that mention it just happen to live along a river. All the ones in Australia, the ones in Africa, the ones in Asia, all the ones in Europe, all the ones in North America, all the ones in South America, You knew that all their civilizations in every one of those continents that recorded that there was a global flood and that there was a special family that happened to be saved, and most of them have through some type of floating device, if not a boat, that also had animals with it, that also then afterward they sent out a bird of some kind to see if the land was dry, and then there was a promise that it would never happen again. It just happened to all just be people who lived along a river who came up with that. Oh, okay. That's nice. God said this was a judgment he was bringing. We have a book out there called Echoes of Ararat that documents, 300 flood legends from just North and South America. And the author is working on the other continents as well. The testimony from history that this event took place. Every civilization that then left after the flood and after the Tower of Babel, they took that legend, that story, that history with them because it was so monumental in the affairs of mankind. In fact, just how extensive was this? It was global. It was devastating. What could cause this? What would this look like if it happened? So tonight we're going to do a couple things. We're going to look at the evidence that shows that this thing took place. Okay, this event did happen. And then we'll make a little application about that at the end. And so it's interesting, some of the understanding today of how our planet operates, even in the secular community, is based on a biblical model of the global flood. The Bible tells us in Genesis chapter 1, on day 3, we start off with how many continents? How many? How many continents did we start with? 1. It says there specifically, day 3, let the waters be gathered to one place and let the dry land appear. We started with 1 continent. Okay, period. There were Christian geologists and scholars who later on would teach, we used to be 1 continent. As we started figuring out that there are these 7, they said it looks like we went together at one time. It wasn't until 1912, a guy named Alfred Wegener, that it became popular, that idea, and we called that 1 continent Pangaea. Who's heard of that? Okay, but now we have 7. Most people, when they read that, and when it's told it to them in their textbooks, it's like, well, yeah, the continents slowly over hundreds of millions of years started to just separate and move apart from each other over, eons, moving at inches per year. That sounds nice. That sounds tranquil. Very peaceful. They just, over time, they just grew distant from one another, and they just didn't write or talk to one another anymore. Didn't send any letters, didn't make any phone calls, and they just drifted apart. Continental drift. What would happen to our planet if you split a continent? Have you ever thought about that? You split a continent. Anybody ever experienced an earthquake? I'm just curious. Okay? You've seen videos of earthquakes. You've seen that when it happens, if it's out in the ocean, it can cause a tsunami that comes on. It can be extremely devastating. I mean, you read about, earthquakes that made rivers flow backwards for a few days. Okay? This is one little earthquake. You split a continent. What would happen? There's a great scientist named Dr. John Baumgartner. Got his PhD in geophysics. He had the same question. He's like, what happens if you split a continent? He got to work with the theoretical division staff at the Los Alamos National Laboratory, one of the most premier laboratories in the United States, and he got to work on developing programming and software for some of the supercomputers they would use back then. These are just incredible, okay? And he developed in that what was called the Terra Project, putting in all the calculations, the data, and the predictions and all this kind of stuff for the continental drift, the way it is today. okay, and kind of help predict, where we're going to see earthquakes and how are they moving and what would it look like in the past when they're moving and everything. And when he put all that data in the supercomputer and he put all the continents back together and he did it and he put in there what happens when you split them apart, guess what happens in the supercomputer model every time you split the continents apart? You have a global catastrophe. And guess how much of the land gets covered in water? All of it. Absolutely. Every time. And so he called this catastrophic plate tectonics. CPT, that's the fancy name. Catastrophic plate tectonics. You split the continent apart, you're going to have a global flood. You cannot get away from it. And so he saw, and then he started seeing really cool things in the model, okay? This is a computer model, all right, but look at what happens, okay? So you split the crust, the mantle, okay? You split the lithosphere, and the mantle, all that magma and everything, hits the water. It's going to cause supersonic jets of steam. You heat that much water that fast. When you split the crust, that water's got to go somewhere as it's evaporating so incredibly. You can't even comprehend this. And the water just starts spewing massive amounts of moisture into the atmosphere. Wait a minute. What's the Bible say happened? Have you ever looked at it? Genesis chapter 7. Would you please turn there if you have a Bible? Genesis chapter 7, verse 11. Oh my goodness, what an amazing verse. Genesis chapter 7, verse 11 says, "Once upon a time, there was a man who loved animals, and God told him to build a boat is that how it reads? No. Look at how it reads. In the 600th year of Noah's life, the second month, the 17th day of the month." Is this once upon a time? No. This is real history. We have day, month, and year. On the same day, it started to rain really bad. Is that what it says? No. No, that's not what it says. How does it start? All the fountains, how many? All the fountains of the great deep burst open first. And then what happened? The floodgates. Floodgates. You all got dams and reservoirs around here. You ever seen the sluice gates, the floodgates when they open them up? Anybody? You seen that water come roaring out? That's how it describes what took place. So, that's exactly what Dr. Bumgarner's model showed. You start to split these continents apart, or the continent apart, and that magma hits the water. Supersonic streams of gas-flashed evaporation, whatever you want to call it, start spewing up into the atmosphere. You can see this from space. The tectonic activity plus all of that is going to cause mile-high, I think I've even read 2-mile-high tsunami waves. They're going to just start crashing, okay? And then they'll come back, and then they'll ebb and flow, and this thing is just going to keep building. All the fountains of the great deep burst forth because this mantle is coming up and it's hitting the water, okay? Now, when it hits the water, it's going to, almost like freeze it, but not freeze. It's going to make it harden up, turn into rock, and so you're going to start creating a new ocean crust, and it's going to start moving because it's being fed. You see it in the animation. It just keeps moving. It keeps going and keep going. Well, it's going to hit the old continents that are still there. Well, they're old, they're dense, they're a lot colder temperature. So when this new hot, fresh ocean floor starts crashing into them, it's going to go under it and subduct under it. And again, this is going to be causing more and higher waves of water and everything. And eventually it's going to start pushing those continents into all kinds of different directions away from each other, and ends up being what's called runaway subduction. Okay? Let me show you here. You see, when you do that, it's going to swell the ocean floor as well. As it's doing that, what did that do to the water levels? It pushes it up higher, up onto land. Let me tell you, all the model, every calculation, not even model, calculation, you just raise the ocean crust just a hair, just a little bit, you flood the whole continent. Today, if you just raise a little bit, you'd flood the whole planet. It doesn't take much at all. So you have these types of conditions happening. We can see where the seams are to this day. The mid-oceanic Atlantic ridge. Okay, over there in the Pacific ones, this is a science called seismic tomography. It's really cool how they use these seismic waves and ground penetrating radar to measure the seafloor and how it's spreading. The red, the orange, is the new ocean floor that is formed. The yellow and green is a little older. The dark blue is the oldest ocean floor. You see how it spread and pushed everything away. And that new ocean crust, look at it, how it just went right underneath North America and South America, just ran right underneath of it. As they were being pushed away this way, and that was coming this way, it almost looks like seams on a baseball. You can measure that new ocean floor that was being made during that and how it went down underneath. You can see it in the seismic tomography. You see those blue, see that blue coming down the green? That green is the mantle today. What's underneath the crust? That blue are these slabs of new ocean floor that were made and have penetrated on down. And still kind of keep moving just a hair. But here's the deal about that. According to the secular models, this has been happening for hundreds of millions of years. Now, if something has been pushed down into the mantle that's really, really hot, it's all molten lava stuff, what after hundreds of millions of years should have happened to that ocean crust that's going down there and sitting in that really, really hot mantle? What should happen to it? It should melt. It should be absorbed into it. It's still there. Very defined. Meaning, can it be hundreds of millions of years old? No. Both the top and bottom of the former oceanic plate were visible, indicating that the plate has not assimilated with the surrounding mantle. In fact, the seismic velocity data indicate the slab is still rather cold. Now, cold as in it's in the middle of the mantle. Okay, it's still really hot. But compared to the rest of it, it's still cold. It hasn't been absorbed yet. In addition, Dr. Baumgartner, who we've been talking about, found that once the older and colder oceanic lithosphere began to subduct, once that stuff started going under the old continents, subducting under it, it would speed up and drop into the less dense hot mantle like a lead fishing weight in water. So as that stuff started pushing more and more and more and more, it's getting heavier and heavier because there's more and more of this ocean floor that's going underneath the old continents. Well, what happens? You take a heavy lead weight and you put it in the water, what happens? Yeah, sometimes you do that with your fishing lure. You put a little something on there to keep it down underneath the water, okay? It's going to start really going. Well, as that starts to really go, what's that going to do to that crust, to that old continent that it's going under? It's going to raise it up and start pushing it. It's going to start pushing it farther away from the other continents as this is happening. He suggested, he referred to this as runaway subduction. When he's watching this in the model, and he's putting in all these he's like, the continents, okay, and they start moving, and then as this stuff keeps building, all of a sudden, whoa, those continents just really take off. He says plate movements were in meters per second. Tallest mountain range in the world, where is it? Mount Everest, part of the Himalayas. Where is that? North of India. India is its own little subcontinent. that slammed into Asia. Slammed it. If it was just over millions of years, hundreds of millions of years, would you have the tallest mountain range in the world? No, because what else is happening? Erosion. Erosion. Current erosion rates. Current erosion rates. Everybody? Current erosion rates that we can measure right now. If the planet is 4.54 billion years old, our continents should have eroded 70 times by now. 70 times they should have eroded away. That's how fast things erode. Can you get the Himalayan mountains if you're just slowly over time doing this? No, because what's going to happen? They'll erode and go away. In Dr. Baumgartner's model, when India slams into Asia, it's moving at 60 miles an hour. Crashes into that and creates what? The tallest mountain range in the world. In fact, when you're ascending up to the peak, right before you get to that, at, what is it, 22,000, 26,000? I can't remember what it is. There's this area called the Hillary Step. You kind of sit there and get ready before you actually make the final summit right there. You're like right there, but it's kind of tricky. So the Hillary Step. Guess what they find there at the Hillary Step? Seashells. Lots of them. They bring them back as souvenirs. How did those get there? Okay. It's not that the water was that high. The water was not that high. What happened? While the water was covering everything, slammed into it, and that mountain came up out of the water. In fact, I'm getting ready to show you. We have what number day it was recorded that they saw the mountain start coming up out of the water. Did you know that? That's how amazing your Bible is. That's how amazing these records are. Okay, so we have all that chaos happening. When that mantle is hitting the water, creating this new ocean floor, and all that water goes spewing up into the atmosphere, guess what it showed in his model? It starts coming down torrentially, like floodgates opening, for a little over a month, probably about 40 days. How long does the Bible say? 40 days and nights it rained. How else? Like floodgates. Like Niagara Falls. Coming down for a month. Okay? And then this flood continued to progress for 150 days. Did you know that? Look at the end of chapter 7, the beginning of chapter 8. It says, it kept rising, prevailing for 150 days. The waters kept coming up. That's 5 months. Did you ever think about that? The people who weren't on the ark, they may have had up to 5 months of trying to survive a calamity we can't even begin to imagine. The conditions, the sounds, the noises, the sights, the trim. I don't know how you walk. They're just crawling. All this volcanic stuff, the clouds, the atmosphere, this torrential downpours. They're trying to escape this judgment. It's not happening. The Bible lays out, you remember how we started? 600th year? Okay, 17th month, the second day. Then look at everything we have, okay? 27th day of the third month, the water ends. 17th day of the seventh month, the waters peak, the ark rests. Look at there. 10th day, first month, what do they start seeing come up out of the water? The mountains, day number 224. Did you know it gives those details? I was so impressed by this. My colleague Matt, president of our ministry, he put this together. I'm like, we got to make something for everybody. Right here. This is what we made, okay? All the dates given there. Okay, this is real history. This really took place. We made this little timeline thing. It's like, this is so cool. We got it. I was like, this is not once upon a time, is it? No, absolutely not. Okay? So, those they're really running away. They finally, and then they start kind of crashing, coming to a stop, okay? Day number 224, they start to see the mountains coming up out of the waters. And then after 314 days, The waters finally all ran off, and it's dry enough for them to come out. But he keeps waiting, keeps sending the doves, the raven, all that kind of stuff. And finally, after 371 days, how long were they on the boat? Over a year. Over a year, after 371 days, they finally come off the land. And there's some interesting things to be seen here. Things like this. This is the Agios Pavlos beach in southern Crete. How do you fold a rock? How do you fold a rock? It's with great difficulty. Yes, absolutely. How do you fold it? Because if you go out there and you try to fold a rock, what happens? It breaks, it cracks, it snaps, right? You cannot fold a rock, and yet we have all these layers of folded rock that supposedly those layers accumulated over millions of years. Really? We have folded mountains. This is Mount Head near Calgary in Alberta, Canada. We have things that are called synclines and anticlines, where you have these ripples that look like compression zones. You know how a car today, unlike the cars of old, a car today has these crumple zones, so it crumples up to absorb the impact. We have impact zones, crumple zones throughout the continents. This whole eastern part here, does any of this look familiar to you? Any of this territory here? I thought you might like this. Look at these rows, one after another, all like this. You see, it's not all one continuous thing. These are all what are called synclines and anticlines. A syncline, it's like this, and anticline, it's like this. And it goes like it's an impact, a crumple zone, that then forms your mountain range. This one particular one, you see this spot down here, just across the border into Maryland, Seidling Hill. Is that how you all say it? Do you know about it? Okay, it's down there on, down there on Interstate 68, right there. Yeah, just across the border. Here it is. Okay. Here, you see this? Is this not cool? And here's the interstate coming up and through. And right here, they had to cut through that crumple zone. And this is what they found when they cut through it. Anybody ever traveled this interstate? We were driving through it, was it last year? Last summer. And I'm I about slammed the brakes as we're coming. I'm like, oh my goodness, get your picture. Hurry, take a picture. How did that happen? The evolutionary answer is, heat and pressure. Millions of years of heat and pressure. You heat it up, that makes it pliable enough so the pressure can, do that and bend it like that. Okay. All right, we got to do a little geoscience here. You ready? See how well you remember this. Does anybody remember your three kinds of rocks, your three types of rocks? Sedimentary, igneous, and metamorphic. Metamorphic. What happens when you heat up sedimentary rock? It becomes what? Metamorphic. If those are all still sedimentary, what does that mean? It could not have happened with hundreds of millions of years of heat and pressure. Otherwise, they'd be metamorphic. If they're all still sedimentary, that would mean they all would have had to have been sedimentary when they were laid down, meaning they all would have been laid down around the same time and still wet and soft enough that they could be bent before they hardened. Would that mean they represent millions of years then? No, it would mean those layers represent all one event. There's this scientist named Dr. Andrew Snelling. He has a PhD in geology, University of Sydney, Australia, has taught in some of the most prestigious universities. He's been a part of a few geological societies and associations around the world. Just a few. Has a few credentials. Okay, he knows a thing or two about rocks. One of the premier geologists in the world. And he wanted to study some folded rock at Grand Canyon. In particularly, the Carbon Canyon fold, you can see right there. You see it's 90-degree bend. 90 degrees. Okay? And also the one at Monument Fold. Again, big fold in the rock. All those layers all folded together. And what he wanted to do was find out, is it metamorphic or still sedimentary? Because if it's metamorphic, then that means it could have happened over millions of years of heat and pressure. If it's sedimentary, what had to happen? All one event at the same time, okay, which would totally destroy the whole millions of years. So what he did was, as he was preparing for this, he spent 20 years. He spent 20 years going through every piece of literature he could ever find that had been written about Grand Canyon over the last 150 years. He went through 150 years of literature, scientific literature on Grand Canyon. Took him 20 years to do it. To see if anybody has ever tested it. Guess what? Nobody's ever checked. So, well, let's do it then. So he starts to make his research proposal in November of 2013. He's going to collect 50 to 60 rock samples from there. And so he files that with the Grand Canyon National Park. You saw his credentials, right? Okay. You think he knows how to fill out the paperwork? Yes, okay. He's done this a few times, okay? They requested in February the next year that he submit 3 peer reviews supporting his proposal to do this. You're like, what? Oh, okay, I can do that. I've never been asked that before, ever. So he did, and he submitted it. And then the research office in March of 2014 sent a letter denying his permit. No explanation why. You're like, I wonder why that is. So he got the Alliance Defending Freedom to send a Freedom of Information request to the National Park Service to find out why it had been denied. Turns out there were 3 geologists who knew he believes the Bible and that he believes its history and a global flood, and so they said, no, deny it, don't let him do this. Remember how we talked in our podcast that we did today? How the secular scientists, many of them in the evolutionary community, they're like, no, don't do that test. No, don't do this scientific test. Whereas those who have their faith in the Lord, they're like, let's do every test. Let's follow where the science goes. Let's do actual observable test of repeatable falsifiable science. What's wrong with that? Why are some afraid of the results? Afraid of the truth? Well, he sent a revised proposal in 2016. The Grand Canyon National Park responded with a demand for details and photographs of all plant sample sites. Just out of curiosity, the Alliance Defending Freedom filed for copies of all permits issued in 2016 to see if they'd asked of that of anybody else. Turns out they had not. They had never made such a request before. Little religious profiling. So they finally sent a formal complaint in December of 2016. Notice now we're at 3 years. This is going on. So in May of 2017, they filed a discrimination lawsuit in the U.S. District Court in Phoenix against the Grand Canyon National Park Service, and the Department of Interior. The government lawyers told them, yeah, guys, this is an obvious case of religious discrimination. We automatically lose. So you're going to have to let him do this. So they told him to reapply again for the research and sampling permit in June of 2017. And the permit was granted and issued, and the Research River Trip grant or permit was granted as well. And so they dismissed their lawsuit now that he's being allowed to go do this. And finally, and the media went crazy. How dare you let this Christian go in there and do these tests? They did the research trip with a 6-person support crew, including Cedarville University geology professor Dr. John Whitmore. And they collected 53 rock samples. And they spent over 3,000 hours in the lab examining them, plus time spent in another laboratory all through it. And they published their first results in June of 2021. Almost 7 years this took. Okay? So, what'd they find? Here's some of their pictures. Who's been? Anybody been to Grand Canyon? All right. If you haven't, it's absolutely worth it. Whatever it takes to eventually go do and take that trip. Absolutely worth it. It's just remarkable. Testimony of the power of our God. Here's that big fold, 90 degree. Let me give you a little example of how big this is. See those layers? We come down to the fold. That's Dr. Whitmore right there. That took quite an event to fold that, don't you think? All righty. So there they are. They're taking, extracting all the things. They sample everything. He's done this a few times, as you can imagine, right? All those credentials, both of these guys and all their team. So they examined them. The 12 samples from Canyon, 10 from the Monument, 4 from the Tapes, all this stuff to compare and contrast. And would you like to know the results? You're like, yeah, we've been sitting here waiting. There are no signs, either macroscopic or microscopic, that the sandstone or its constituent grains have been even slightly metamorphosed. Not a hint of any kind of heat and pressure ever to take place against these folded rock layers. Not a bit. His conclusion then, therefore our 4-year research project confirms that these rock layers were bent while they were still soft, after rapid deposition, after millions of years of those being accumulated? No, after they were all accumulated in less than 1 year during a flooding event. This is tremendous evidence that the canyon's rock layers were laid down during a massive flood and subsequently bent before any of the layers had hardened. I can't imagine why nobody had ever done this test before. Why? Because when we do actual observable tests for repeatable falsifiable science, what does it always support? Every time. We love science. We love science. Oh, I've got some exciting stuff to show you tomorrow night. Can't wait. Anyway, we got to get done tonight, though, before we get to it. By the way, this was something interesting. Trilobites. So these little underwater roly-poly things down here, okay, down there on the corner, those are used as an index fossil. You find one of those, that tells you how old that rock layer is. And so they range anywhere from like 300 million years to 500 million years, depending on which one you find, and they say, he found these trilobite crawling traces. You see these little burrows there? They were trilobite burrows that going up through these layers, through millions of years of layers. That's a long time to be burrowing. Unless they were what? Trying to escape what was burying them. And that isn't millions of years. But you see, that's how these layers are labeled. There are these rocks in there, these fossils in there, that when you find them, that's supposed to identify your layers, and these layers then identify those fossils. Okay, that's supposedly how this works. So if you find a certain trilobite, that trilobite, if it's Permian or Ordovician or Silurian or Devonian, okay, that'll determine how many hundreds of millions of years old it is. Okay, so I'd heard that before, that we determine how old the fossil is by the rock it's in, but we more accurately determine how old the rock layer is by what the fossil is. I was taught that. So if we find a T-Rex in a rock layer, that means that is Cretaceous rock, and that is probably around 68, 66 million years old. Okay, how do we know the Cretaceous rock is 66, 68 million years old? Because we found a T-Rex fossil in it. Well, how do we know the T-Rex is 66, 68 million years old? Because it was found in Cretaceous rock. Well, how do we know the Cretaceous rock is 66? Because we found the T-Rex in it. I'd heard this before. I'm sitting in my human anthropology class, And we're going to find out, about how we date how old these fossils are, okay? And the teacher says we date the fossils by the rocks, but we more accurately date the rocks by the fossils. And I'm like, oh, here it is. Okay, I got my pencil and paper ready. I'm going to take the notes. How do they actually justify this? How do they explain this, really? And that was it. I'm in a university class. That was it. And I'm looking. Anybody? And the students are like, oh, okay. This is how this works. Is that scientific at all? No. They determined how old these layers are basically on however old they want it. Darwin told Charles Lyell, I needed to be 300 million years old so I can make my evolution thing work. He said, done. They're 300 million years old. That's how this is done. That's how they did this in the 1800s. And here's the crazy thing. This stack of rocks here, you see this? Who's ever seen this thing called the geologic column? Everybody seen a picture of something like that? Okay. You know how many places in the world this has been found in this order, these layers, in this order, this thickness, as you see portrayed all the time? You know how many places have been found in the world? Two places. Museums and textbooks. That's it. The vast majority of the planet has tremendous amounts of it missing. 80 to 85% is missing 3 of the big geologic periods, or they're in the wrong order. 77% have 7+ periods missing. 94% have 3 or more systems. It's all a mess. We lead a field trip every 3 years down in southeastern Illinois, is the Shawnee National Park, right? Not far from where my family lives. And we take them there to this national park there, and we always show them the Illinois Geological Survey. Right here, it goes straight from Cretaceous to Pennsylvania. That's the Jurassic, Triassic, and Permian periods are missing. So apparently, for 146 million years, nothing happened in southern Illinois. Just went straight to that one. Skipped it. Well, history apparently was happening over in Indiana. In fact, I found a teaching guide for junior high grade school. It said, as stated earlier, no one locality on Earth provides a complete record of our planet's history because stratigraphic columns can contain unconformities. But by correlating rocks from locality to locality at millions of places around the world, geologists have pieced together a composite stratigraphic column called the geologic column. They admit, we've never seen this anywhere. We take all the different parts and we try to put it together and make this column up. But no one place on Earth has all those pieces. Then how can you say they represent periods of time? No, instead, what they represent are a devastating global catastrophe. Dr. Tim Clary, great guy I've got to know personally. He has a PhD in geology, taught geology for a long time. He was an exploration geologist for Chevron. So they're like, okay, this is where we drill and we try to find oil here. And he would help analyze all that. So he has access to column data. When you drill down, you bring out the column and you can see what all is in there, all the layers that are in that column, from miles down deep. He started putting this together. He's like, this kind of looks like we can see the progress of the flood. And we can map this out and see how the flood progressed over those 150 days. Remember, 150 days it kept rising over the continents. And we can kind of see how it progressed up over the flood.
The last 10 years, compiling data across 6 continents. We now have about 3,000 columns.
Every one of those
and each column is if I drilled a well right here all the way down to the crust. I recorded how many feet of sandstone, limestone, shale. Each of those cores, we put it in by latitude and longitude. So here is an example of the rock types we kept track of. Kept track of 16 different rock types. I don't know the thicknesses of them, but the different types of rocks, whether it was coal or salt or sand or shale. We also kept track of the megasequences. And so we see the 6 megasequences. We even kept track of an earlier megasequence called the Precambrian or the pre-Sauk megasequence. In some cases, there's some rocks even before the Sauk.
So in geology, this is secular geology, there's this idea that we see, even though nowhere do we see this whole geologic column, we do see patterns. And they call those patterns mega sequences because there'll be this set of rock layers they'll find. And then they'll find this kind of set of rock layers here and here. And they call those the mega sequences that they can identify throughout geology. And so he mapped all of this, and he says, here's what we see when we put this stack together that you all call the geologic column. What we see is not eons of time, but we see the different parts of the flood as it took place. These lower layers here, those are the first 40 days of the progress of the flood. Then we start getting the plates moving. Remember, they start really moving, and then we start having that runaway subduction. They start speeding up. We see the final parts covered here. We have global coverage, and then this is when the water's running off and laying down a whole nother set of sediment. Let me have him show you this one. Okay, here is what it looks like with how this stacks up, because in these layers we have a progression of the types of fossils being added. Okay, and so these are the sequences, and notice we go from lots of water creatures, lots and lots of marine stuff, to more marine stuff, but eventually we start getting some land stuff mixed in, starting as mostly reptiles, and then we get some more, because here's the thing about reptiles, when they die and they're in water, they sink. Mammals, though, bloat and float. So would you expect to see a whole bunch of mammals buried with a whole bunch of reptiles? No, not if it's global. If it is millions of years, you should see them together. But if it's a flooding event, you should see them somewhat separated. Guess what we see in the fossil record? We see it separated out some. Now, do we find some mammals mixed in with them? Oh, yeah. Have at least 438 documented occasions where they found mammals buried right there with dinosaurs. Pretty cool. So, this is what it looks like when we stack those layers on top of each other. Those mega sequences. Notice how it gets more and more covered until finally the last one, look at that last one. You see how it's all out around the continents there? That is showing when it runs off. Keep going. Oh, so this is North America. It keeps adding, building, and building, and building. Until this last section here in the United States, this last section in the yellow here, is what gets flooded. How many dinosaurs have ever been found in this area where you all live? None. Why? That doesn't make any sense. Why are there no dinosaurs here? Why are they all out over here? Guess what Dr. Clary's model shows as we're looking at these mega sequences and how they build up one after the other. Guess what's the last part of the continent that's buried during the flood? That area there. Okay? And then, after it gets covered and it gets slammed into the Pacific Plate, it starts to make the Rocky Mountains up over there, okay? And uplifts all that kind of stuff, which is why you find dinosaur tracks up at 90-degree angles. So all this is the last area. So you're not going to find any dinosaurs out here. You're not going to find really any land animals here because this is all water, ocean stuff. And how long did the waters keep rising? More than that, 150 days. So what are all the animals doing? They're all heading this direction, all your land animals. You have this is all marine stuff. Vast majority of the fossil record, 94-point-some%, 95-point-some% is all shells of the fossil record. Marines, clams, all that kind of stuff, okay? So you get all your fossils out here, all your dinosaurs out here. And interesting thing about it, you ever seen any dinosaur footprints, dinosaur trackways? Guess what direction they're always heading? They're heading toward that area. Every time I find some, I get my compass out and I'm like, okay, where are we at from where all the dinosaurs are? Okay, I bet the tracks are heading that way, and get my compass and put it out there. This is a set in the panhandle of Oklahoma in what's called the Black Mesa area. There's a footprint, okay. This was a hadrosaur type animal, so kind of like this Edmontosaurus here. And look, they're going north, trying to head that direction. And there was a horse farrier. You know what they do? Okay, they shoe the horse, okay. They shod the horse. They know, those guys are experts about horse anatomy and about their gait and how they walk, and they can tell if they're injured or not. He's looking at these tracks during an event out there, and he's like, this animal was injured. They're like, what? Yeah. He's limping, and the way he's limping, he's in a hurry trying to get away from something. The curator of the museum there is telling me that. I'm like, you don't say. I wonder what it was trying to get away from. So then it gets fully covered, and full coverage here. And then this last one here, notice most of the sediment, then the thick parts of the sediment are off the coast. Why? Because it all had to run off. This area right here in the Gulf of America is called the Whopper Sands. The Whopper Sands. When Dr. Clary was with Chevron, he said, I think we need to go a couple hundred miles out there and drill down and see if there's some sands out there that we'll find oil in. Well, that's pretty expensive. That would cost a lot of money to go out there. He's like, well, I just think they might want to do that. You know why he thinks that? Because all the sediment that's been shoved off, ripped off during the drainage part of the flood. He thinks there'll be sand way out there. There are these little mountains called the Arbuckles in southern Oklahoma that they say used to be 1,000 feet higher than what they are, but they are sheared off. And the geology students of Oklahoma University, there's no sediment around here. We don't know where all the sediment is. Guess where it's at? It's clear out in the Gulf. They finally did. They drilled down there. Dr. Clary sees some of his colleagues years later at a symposium, like, Tim, guess what we found? He's like, what? He's like, the Whopper Sands. The what? The Whopper Sands. We went out there where you said we drilled down. There's tons of oil out there. He said, you don't say. Just as predicted. So we see these layers full of rocks called what? Fossils. Who likes fossils? Okay. What's a fossil? It's a rock. Let me illustrate for you. Okay? Real quick here. I need some volunteers. Here we go. Come up here. Come up here. Wake them up. Wake them up. There you go. That's all right. That's it. Come here. It's a school day, I know. And they had to come listen to another long, boring teacher, okay? All right, here we go. Real quick. Come here. Come here. Come stand. Come here. All right. Stand right there. Hold on right there. Let's hold some fossils here. Some real fossils. There you go. Hold that one. Show everybody. Ooh, look at this big one here. Look at that. All right, turn around. Hold it. Put your hands under it because we don't want to drop it. Very good. Okay. You can hold that one. And let's get a trilobite. Oh, you got the trilobite. Let's get a tooth. Okay. Here you go. There's a tooth. All right, that's a mastodon tooth. This would have been from the Ice Age, okay? A mastodon tooth, a little different from a mammoth tooth. And sometimes there's still enamel and stuff preserved on it, okay? This is the vertebrae, one of the backbones or tailbones of like an Edmontosaurus. This is a trilobite we just mentioned. Okay, these are all rock fossils, okay? Are they heavy or light? They're a little heavy, okay? Are they solid or soft? They're pretty solid, aren't they? Yeah, because are they still like bone or like they're living? No, they turn into rock, haven't they? They turn into rock. This one's called coprolite. Okay, coprolite. And that's definitely not soft. It's heavy. It's solid. We hope at one time it was really soft because coprolite is the scientific term for dino poo-poo. Yes. Okay, but it's pretty. It doesn't feel heavy. But it's pretty solid, isn't it? Okay. I mean, it used to be a whole round one. Okay, it used to be a whole dino pie. Okay, and it was split in half and polished. You can see the insides, and you can extract the contents of this and see what it ate, which is really cool. Okay, and so it was a whole thing together, and they separated at this fossil shop that I found it in, and they said, well, we made it to be bookends. And somebody just bought one half. The other half, what the other half? So anyway, there you're getting heavy there. Yeah, but these things were alive or from something that was alive. And are they still soft or bone? No, they've been turned into rock. How does that happen? How do these things turn into rocks? Very special conditions. Okay, you ever see roadkill? What kind of roadkill you got around here? I know deer. Raccoons, skunks, lots of skunks, yeah. Squirrels, possums, okay, good. All right, good. No armadillos yet. Whew, that's good. All right, anyway. Oh, they're a nuisance. Anyway, any of them ever turn into fossils? Never! Yet we have these layers that are filled with trillions of fossils. How does that happen? Because nothing today is turning into a fossil. Very special circumstances, okay? Because what happens to the roadkill? It goes away. It gets decayed. It gets eaten. It gets scavenged. Bacteria, insects, and everything. It goes away. It never turns to a fossil. How do you get a fossil? Okay, here's how we teach how to make a fossil. This is what we do at VBS and church camps and all kinds of stuff, okay? We go like this. Everybody go like this and say mud. Very good. Okay, wake up your neighbor. All right. Go like this and say water. Water. Go like this and say quickly. Quickly. That's the key. That's the key. So these things, all these things, okay, they had to be buried with lots of what? Mud that preserved it so it didn't decay, get scavenged, go away. That mud, though, had to come in, being brought by what? Water to sweep them up and bury them in it. And it all had to happen what? Quickly, so it would be preserved for us. After it gets buried, the minerals in the water start seeping into the bones after all the flesh and everything decays away, and seeping into the bones and replaces the bone material with the minerals, turning it into rock. It's called permineralization. Okay? That's how you get it. So the only way you can get fossils is through what kind of an event? A flooding type event. Exactly. A massive type flooding that's bringing massive amounts of sediment. There's a couple of really neat resources. One called the Paleobiology Database. You can go in here and you can look at, I forgot to get a zoomed in picture of right here to see what's buried here. You can see it's a catalog of all officially identified fossils in an area. And you can zoom in, we could zoom in right here and see all the different fossils that have been officially identified and cataloged for us to know what's around here. It's all marine stuff around here. It's shells, it's clams, it's bivalves, it's mollusks, it's all that kind of stuff, okay? So we can do that. Notice, though, where we see dots. How much of the world? All of it. All of it. We find fossils on every continent, islands, all kinds of it. We find it over the whole world. Which means, some point in history, all of these places in the world had to be covered with brought by lots of I wonder what event that was. Mercy. We see some pretty amazing stuff. Remember those trackways that we saw, Dr. Snelling saw in the Grand Canyon? We find the actual trilobites and arthropods stuck in position in those trackways, trying to make their way through. We have moments frozen in time. These guys were having lunch. See, in the evolutionary story, they die, and then, you read the signs at a museum. They die, and just happened, just by luck, got buried by sediment. That's not what happened here, is it? No, they got buried, and then they died. See, there's a complete difference in the order. We have moments frozen in time. We have dinosaurs being swept away together, a Triceratops and a T-Rex found in Montana. We have two locked in mortal combat, a Protoceratops and a Velociraptor, when they got buried instantly. Here is a squid. How many bones does a squid have? None. You realize the instantaneous special conditions you have to preserve that? There have been some found with their ink sac still intact. And they're still, as my colleague says scientifically, inky. This is one of our fossils in our big trailer. This is a Stenopterygius, a type of ichthyosaur. Notice the circles there? Those are babies. There's one still inside mama, one coming out of mama, and one over by the tail. What's very special about this is where this was found in Germany, Holzbaden-Württemberg, Germany. This was acquired by the American Museum of Natural History in 1901. There were over 100 of them there, all pregnant. 87 more pregnant ichthyosaurs found in Chile. 37 more found in Austin, Nevada. They call it Berlin Ichthyosaur State Park. So you've got them in Europe, you got them in South America, you got them in North America. All pregnant. the odds over, it was like 128, 130 million years they say these all date to, that every time one of these just happened by chance, luckily got buried, it was always giving birth. It was always pregnant. Is that a good scientific hypothesis? No, what's a better hypothesis? During when? During birthing season for ichthyosaurs. This is a horse in Wyoming. What's buried with the horse? Fish. And no, it's not a seahorse. This is a dinosaur with a mammal in its stomach. Remember I told you sometimes we do find them mixed together? This one was so big, this mammal is fighting or being washed away together, and they're clawing onto each other with a dinosaur. Mammals as big as dinosaurs. See, in the evolutionary story, that's not supposed to happen. The dinosaurs go extinct, and then mammals rise up. I have to rewrite the story. Trackways. This trackway that we saw in South Dakota has T-Rex, Edmontosaurus, Struthiomimus, Oviraptor, and birds. Wait a second. We're not supposed to have birds yet. Remember, the dinosaurs are supposed to evolve yet we find their trackways right there together. That's a problem. What are we seeing in the fossil record? Death. Judgment against sin. This is a T-Rex called Black Beauty in Alberta, Canada. What is happening to this T-Rex? What's it look like? Look at his back legs. Look at his head. What's he doing? What's happening? He's drowning. He's gasping for air. This is my colleague Matt. He was just there earlier this year. He went up to Canada to teach. That's how big it is. It's beautiful. He said it was beautiful. Just an amazing specimen. What do you see about all of these dinosaurs? This one in Alberta. This one also, he took this picture of this one. This is a Gorgosaurus. It's like a cousin to Albertosaurus. Look at this one, Coelophysis. What do you notice about all these? What do you see about all their necks? They're stretching back. They call it the opistotonic death pose. That they're just doing like what a bird does when it dies, and the tendons recoil and it pulls its neck back. Is that what's happening here? No. This is a Camarasaurus, a long neck. Look at his back legs. What's he trying to do? See, they didn't realize what was happening here when they first found this. This is at Dinosaur National Monument on the border of Utah and Colorado. And I took this picture of it because what's really cool about this, it's because of this one they found, it's all intact there. You see how all the bones are? Because of this, they thought these types of dinosaurs walked with their heads like this. They called it a swan neck. Okay? You've seen long-necked dinosaurs with their heads like this, right? Until many years later, they realized, oh no, his neck is being bent back, broken as he's gasping for air, drowning, and it's breaking his neck as he's being buried in the sediment. So now we realize the swan neck, long-necked dinosaurs never had swan necks. Okay, they actually studied the vertebrae, and that doesn't work out. They were always straight. Okay, now they could raise them up like this, and they could go like this, okay, and up and down, but they couldn't go like this. That was based on a misunderstanding of a picture of judgment against sin. Where he is found, this whole wall, notice it's 2 stories tall. It's still preserved there. There are over 800 dig sites. This is just the wall of bones, and it's at a 67-degree tilt. It was uplifted as the Rocky Mountains were being formed. 350-plus tons. There are 800 dig sites, over 210,000 acres, excavating over 350-plus tons of fossils, 350 tons of fossils since 1909. In that wall right there, my wife took that picture, there's still over 2,000 of them all buried together. This was judgment against sin. Okay, real quick. You got just a few more minutes? A few more minutes? Okay, real quick. Last thing. What about radiometric dating? Who's heard of carbon-14 dating? Okay, we'll talk about that one specifically tomorrow night. Okay? Radiometric dating. Well, can't we just do a test to see that the rocks are that old? Remember, what did I tell you? They labeled how old those rocks were first, back in the 1800s. The labeling came before radiometric dating. So when they do radiometric dating, guess what it always has to agree with? How old we already have said those rocks are. Did you know that? If it doesn't, we throw those results out, and we do it again. And we pick which test we want to use so we can get the right date we want. We can use potassium argon, we can use rubidium strontium, we can use lead to lead, we can use uranium. There's all kinds of them you can use. But here's the deal. You take the rock sample, okay, and what you have is, let's say it's uranium lead, okay, or potassium argon. The potassium, it has a type of isotope in it that's unstable, and after time, that potassium breaks down and turns into argon. So you measure how much of the potassium is still there, how much of the argon is still there. Here's what you get to put into the mathematical formula, the equation. You get to put in how much potassium did it start with. Do you know? Were you there when it was formed? No. You get to put in how much argon it started with. Do you know? Were you there? No. You get to decide how much leaked in, how much leaked out. And then you get to decide how long does it take for it to get to the ratio it is. The potassium and argon, how much is in this rock sample? You get to determine how long did that take. You get to put all those numbers in. So that way, you always get what age? However age we already said that rock is before we ever tested it. It seems to work out every single time. Isn't that amazing? You know what happens when you assume, right? Yeah. You get old rocks. That's what happens. I'm not making this up. You think I'm making this up? I'm more simple. You can go to Encyclopedia Britannica. You can go to textbooks. I've got examples of collegiate level textbooks that tell you all of these assumptions are in the thing. This is word for word, Encyclopedia Britannica. And I love this part at the bottom. Different schemes have been developed to deal with the critical assumptions stated above. Radiometric dating does not date anything. It does not measure an age, ever. So I've tried to stop calling it radiometric dating. I call it radiometric sampling. Because all it does is tell you how much of those two isotopes are in that rock. How much of the potassium? That's all it tells you. Totally up to you then to determine how long that took in its age. And here's the crazy thing. Let's say the rock slab is as big as the stage. Over here, the ratio, the sample, will be totally different than it is over here, compared to there. A lot of flexibility in this, isn't there? That's how this works. So there was this long 8-year project of these guys who had PhDs in their fields. You may recognize a couple of those names already. They wanted to study this. They wanted to see just how crazy of a range is it. Like if we send a sample from over here to the lab, and we send a sample from over there to the lab, and we tell them, use the one test on this one, use the one test, what will the range be? It should all be the same, right, if it's all the same age? From Grand Canyon, whole rock sample. We got ages from 656 million years old to 1.3 billion years old. That means you had a range of 878 million years you could use to make sure you get it. Oh, we need it right there at that age because that's how old we said it is. They did it again. Here's another one they did with all the different tests from Wyoming. A range from anywhere from 2.8 to 1.5. So a range of 1.587 billion year fluctuation. Let me illustrate like this. If you were asking a historian, a credentialed historian, when did Abraham Lincoln die? And that credentialed PhD historian said, well, he died April 15th, 1865, give or take about 2,000 to 3,000 years. Would you trust anything that historian told you? That's how this works. To show you just how bad it is, Dr. Stephen Austin, PhD in geology from Penn State, You can hold that against them or not, I don't know. But anyway, when Mount St. Helens erupted, May 18th, 1980, my parents, were getting married on that day. That is their wedding day. They finally get home, turn on the news, and like, what is going on? It's like the whole world's going crazy, okay? Mount St. Helens erupted on their wedding day. Dr. Austin did some of the great geological work there. He got some of the rocks from the eruption, sent it to be radiometric tested, potassium argon tested. He said, tell me how old this rock is. Didn't tell them where he got it from. Just wanted to see what they would come at. And they said, well, because you couldn't tell us exactly which rock it came out of, so they knew exactly where to fine-tune their date. They said it can be anywhere from 340,000 to 2.8 million years old. It was only 20 years old at that time. And by the way, these are all other volcanoes. We know when they erupted. Here's how old they said they were. Anywhere from 1.6 million, 250,000, 22.8 million years old. Because they can't get it unless you give them which rock it was. You identified it for them before they do the test. And here's something else. You're like, but it still gives them millions of years, so doesn't that still disprove the Bible? No. Because remember all those things you get to plug in to get the date you want? One of the things that has been observed, test, repeated, falsified, is the decay rate. That's the one thing we know for sure. It takes millions of years for this to decay. Guess what's the only thing that's been observed about decay rates? I can give you the scientific paper on every one of these. The only thing that's been observed is that decay rates are not constant. They fluctuate and change all the time. That's the only thing that's been observed. What should that do to every radiometric test out there? Every date given on every sign. Wait. Well, don't we know it takes millions of years to get oil? 2013, U.S. Department of Energy's Pacific Northwest National Laboratory in Richland, Washington. They got algae. By the way, oil comes from algae, not dinosaur fossils. It's not fossil fuel. Okay, that was all made up by Sinclair. Okay, as a promo thing. All right, made it out. They got it in under heat and pressure. Got it in less than an hour. Doesn't take millions of years to get oil. What about coal? You all know something about coal around here, right? Okay, huge coal seams, flat, buried. Tens of millions to hundreds of millions of years, right, to get these massive coal seams that are always perfectly flat, which would match like if vegetation was just ripped off the surface and buried on all these occasions. Doesn't it take millions of years to get that? Well, in 1984, the Argonne National Laboratory in Lamont, Illinois, heated plant material for 2 to 8 months. In the absence of oxygen, got coal in 1 to 4 months. And then, even better, in 1996, the West Virginia University and the U.S. Bureau of Mines heated plant material under heat and pressure at what they would consider at this deep, where you find it, and if it was still wet sediment when it was laid down, like a global flood. These aren't Bible believers. And they got coal in 75 days. Does it take millions of years to get coal? No. Under the right circumstances, it just takes a matter of days. And by the way, carbon-14 dating. I'm going to give you a number. Remember this tomorrow night. Carbon-14 dating only works for stuff up to 50,000 years, so they say. After that, the carbon-14 should be gone. There should be no carbon-14. If there's still carbon-14 in it, they say it's less than 50,000 years. Everybody say 50,000 years. 50,000 years. Okay. So should we ever find carbon-14 in coal? If it's supposed to be 35 million years old or 65 million years old or 300 million years old. Should we ever find carbon-14 in it? No. Guess what has been found in every single piece of coal that has ever been carbon tested? Every single one. There's carbon-14 in it, and lots of it. Lots of it. Meaning, is it millions of years old? No, it's only what? Thousands of years old. Oh, by the way, diamonds, that's supposed to be coal that after billions of years has been under heat and pressure turned into diamond. Guess what's been found in every single diamond that's ever been carbon tested? Every single one. Carbon-14, and lots of it. So, what have we seen here tonight? We've seen a lot. Way more than you wanted to see. Far more than you wanted to see. How many people survived this event? You heard the history, right? 16th day, second month, 600th, and then on this number day of this month, on day number 224, on day number 314, on day number 371. You heard the history, right? You've seen the global effect. You've seen the global deposition of death over all the planet. How many people were alive when that happened? Chapter 5 of Genesis, they're living on average 912 years. How many children do you have in that amount of time? Jewish tradition, Adam and Eve had 56 children. 33 sons, 23 daughters. Now, is that in the Bible? No, but that's Jewish tradition. You calculate that out. Now, we don't know the level of wickedness. The level of wickedness is beyond anything we can imagine. The Bible says they were so wicked they couldn't even have one good thought. Can people still have a good thought today? Yeah, no, they were so depraved we can't imagine. So depraved you had to wipe it all out. Wash it all clean to start new. So the number of deaths through unimaginable means, we don't know. But just purely by the age and the reproductive abilities of that time, through that much, those long, you very easily could have, I'm not saying this is how many there were, but you very easily could have the same number of people alive then as are alive today. 8 billion people. And how many survived? 8. Has there ever been a worse event, a worse catastrophe in human history than the flood? No. It is the most devastating event ever. My best friend stood as best man at my wedding. He works for Toyota. He got to take a trip to Japan last year. And he said, before he even asked him, I'm going to take pictures. I said, okay. He was able to one day go down and to Hiroshima and see the museum there and see the blast site and the memorials are there and everything. I then asked him, I said, do you know, were you able to find out for me how many nurseries, daycares, cry rooms, whatever, have paintings or murals of Hiroshima on them? He said, I don't think there are any there. I said, okay, all right, I was just curious. Do you think that in New York there are very many nurseries, daycares, cry rooms, whatever, that have murals of September 11th on them? Please, I'm not judging anybody. How many churches have nurseries, cry rooms that have happy pictures of the worst catastrophe, most deadly event in human history on their walls? Again, I'm not making any accusation. Oh yeah. I just, what are we doing to our worldview? Think about the worldview. That's all I'm asking you to think about, okay? Do you remember why Dr. Sharp started this ministry? Because at church they heard these cute, nice, little fun Bible stories, and then they went to the secular world and they were taught real history, real science. these stories that we're telling our young people, they're real history. They really did happen. They need to be told them. You do need to teach them. But what are they learning about them? See, that's all I'm doing. I want to challenge your worldview, your whole concept, your understanding. These are really, you imagine Noah, what he went through. The Bible says in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 7, by faith Noah, being warned of God of things not yet seen, in reverence, in holy fear, prepared an ark for saving some animals? No, for the salvation of his family. He did whatever it took to save his family. And then it says, the part of the verse, Hebrews chapter 11, verse 7, that always bugged me. It says, by which he condemned the world. How Noah building the ark did he condemn the world? I never, it was because he built it, and if they didn't get on it. And then my sister kind of gave me a little kick in the seat. And she said, we were just sitting there. I was just eating probably some homemade ice cream. Just sitting there at my folks' house. She said, you should know better. You of all people should know better. I'm like, what? What did I do? I said, you should know better. You're a historian. You should know better. I'm just eating ice cream. What did I do? She has many degrees, academic degrees. One of them is in theater. And she said, you keep calling these Bible characters. She said, characters are fictional people in a play. These are historical figures. I'm like, oh, that's good. That's good. That's my worldview coming into play. And then it hit me with Noah. He built the ark by which he condemned the world. Because what does Noah have to do on that day it starts to rain? He has to go in the ark. How many doors did it have? And when he walked, don't you see him being on that? Him being the last one to go in on that day. Everybody's in, everything's in. We've done the checklist, okay. And when he goes to step foot in that door, what's he saying about everybody? You think he was an only child? His dad had died. Was his mom still alive? Grandpa Methuselah was dead. Were his other grandparents? Aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews, everybody he's working. What's he saying when he goes to step through that? They're condemned. You've been in ministry very long. Number one reason somebody will give for not becoming a Christian is why? A family member hasn't. Number one reason somebody will give for not obeying the gospel because a family member hasn't. If I do so, what does that say about them? That's hard. That's really hard. Noah was willing to do whatever it took, though, to save his family. No matter what it meant about the rest of his family that didn't come with him, he was still going to take them through that one door that they might be saved. Do you need to make that same decision tonight? Heavenly Father, thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for great patience, for sitting here for so long that we could have this study tonight. And we could see the impact of judgment. Just how devastating sin is and how it separates us from the author of life, from the sustainer of life, from our Creator. Thank you, though, you sent that water to wash away the sin of the earth, through which, the Bible says, 1 Peter chapter 3, Noah and his family were saved. Thank you that we, too, can have the incredible gift of salvation and therefore the eternal promise, the assurance of life with you forevermore. May that be our reality this very night, that we are in Christ, no matter who has or who hasn't before us, that we, individually, each person, has come to you. And then therefore, For those of us who have that blessed assurance, may we go and tell someone else of that good news, that they too can go through that one door and have everlasting life. Thank you for Jesus, in whose name we pray. Amen.